everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to yet another dual book review. Hello! Please excuse the reflection in my glasses. Apparently it's just really bright out today and my big window is just causing all the things. So, besides the point, today we are here to discuss two books, specifically two sci-fi books, which I'm very, very excited to review. So today we're going to be reviewing The Last Watch by J.S. Downes and Dune by Frank Herbert. These are two sci-fi books that I have read very recently. They are both extremely different from one another, but they are both sci-fi and I enjoyed them both. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about Dune first, my guys. Dune by Frank Herbert. If you don't know, this is a sci-fi classic. Has had a little bit of a resurgence recently because of the Dune movie that was released with Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya and all of the other star-studded cast that I can't remember their names of, but you know what I mean. This is essentially the first book in a Dune saga that follows Paul Atreides. We start with Paul as a 15-year-old boy and his mom, who has been kind of training him to be this interesting monk being. That's the only way I can equate it to something that I would know. Not necessarily in the our world standards of being a monk, but kind of a Dungeons and Dragons style being a monk, where he has extreme control over his body. He has very, very good mind control and just, you know, it's very interesting. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but she's been kind of training him for this, and he is the essentially bastard son of the Duke Atreides, who has claimed him as his heir and his own son. At the beginning of this, they are approached by this woman, this matriarchal figure, and she's like, yo, I gotta test Paul to see if he's this being that I think he is. And so he kind of goes through this test and everything, and they're currently on a planet where he's grown up and everything. Then after this test and this kind of confirmation sort of that he is different from everybody else, we love a chosen one trope, and then this is definitely that. His family moves off of this planet and goes to Dune, which has another name, Arrakis. It goes to Arrakis, which is also called Dune, because his father is going to implement some sort of, I don't know, branch of life there. Not entirely sure. They're going there to be part of the trade there and to try, you know, lessen conflict, that kind of a thing. So that's where it starts off, and Paul's life starts there. This book was not what I was expecting. I was kind of going in expecting it to be super difficult to follow and just be really super sci-fi heavy and all that kind of stuff, because it is a classic in the sci-fi genre. This is probably in the same vein that Wheel of Time is for fantasy. I would say that this is that for sci-fi, alongside Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, I would say. But Isaac Asimov's is definitely more technologically based. This feels almost like fantasy in some aspects because it is a brand new world, and we are getting to know this, I don't know, just this ecosystem and cultures and different kind of peoples on this world. So it does feel quite like fantasy, but it is still space-based because it's space. It's sci-fi. That's kind of where we're at with this story, and it follows Paul for a number of years as he's on Arrakis and as he's, you know, living his life and becoming this being that he is prophesized to become. It's interesting. This book is definitely interesting because though it was quite easy for me to fall into, I did read this with the full cast audiobook, which was very enjoyable because that audiobook, though it switched in and out of being full cast, sometimes it was just the narrator narrating like a normal audiobook, sometimes it had the full cast. When it did, it had sound effects in the background and atmospheric wind swirling on the sand dunes. It was very cool and I was very immersed. I found this to be in a weird little league of its own. Not that it was absolutely amazing, incredible, awesome, fantastic. No, it was just in a league of its own because it feels so different from anything else that I've read. And I think that's because of the narration style. So if you remember my first dual book review, I talked about The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. This one. And similarly, these are the most different books you can get, but similar to this one, Dune has a very weird narration style that completely distances the reader from the characters and from what's happening. So it's extremely cinematic, and I can see why people keep making TV shows and movies of Dune. I can see it because it's very cinematic to read. It's like you're witnessing what's happening. It's not like you're experiencing it. Like you would in a sci-fi book today. You would be like experiencing it with the characters, you'd be getting connected to the characters and all that kind of stuff. This felt very detached from the characters, which is, I think, good, because I didn't like Paul at all. He was just awful. He was terrible to read from, and I liked having that distance because then I was allowing myself to go, okay, I recognize that I don't like this character, but I'm enjoying the story that's happening around him. So it allowed me that disconnect without being super mad at Paul for being Paul. So for POVs in this book, we don't always follow Paul, and because it is so cinematic, it is almost a like third person omniscient, where you get to dip into other people's heads in all the same scenes. Sometimes on the same page you kind of dip in and out of people's heads, which was a little hard to follow, but again, you get used to it. Like any book you read, you get used to it. Now, one thing I didn't really like about this was the dialogue of this book. The writing was wonderful, like the description and the, you know, exposition of this book. The dialogue felt so cheesy. Like, there were some bits where I was like, no human alive would say this. This feels like it was pulled from a children's TV show, like cheesy, not quite real. So I will say that the dialogue was just not good. And that kind of, you know, every time I came across a sentence like that, I was just like pulled right out of the story, and I was like, oh, okay. All right. No villain would say that, but cool. Speaking of the other characters in this, I really enjoyed Paul's mom, and I enjoyed Paul and his mom's like trajectory in the story the most out of all of them. I didn't really like the other stuff that we got with like the villain and all that kind of stuff in the corner. And I put villain in quotation marks because like Paul doesn't know that he's the villain until like he comes into contact with him near the end, and they have their big, you know, to-do, but like he doesn't even know that that guy specifically is the villain, and the villain believes that Paul and his mom are dead for the majority of the book. So I'm just like, they don't have anything in contact with each other. They don't have that like, you know, typical villain hero narrative where they're always kind of bouncing off each other and they're having that consistent conflict. No, it wasn't really here in this. It was an interesting view on Paul's journey with his mom and all of like the people that they meet and they come in contact with and how each of them change. I won't spoil anything about like what goes on in any of the storylines. I just wanted to mention that. That's really all my thoughts on Dune. I did talk about this more in my Friends Pick My TBR video, take 3. So if you want to go hear more thoughts, definitely go there. But yeah, this was definitely an interesting book, and I am going to be continuing with this series, but this wasn't like super amazing in any part. I enjoyed the experience of reading it. Like, I gave it 4 stars in the end after throwing it through my rating system. It was definitely interesting to me, and I do recommend it if you are in the mood for a different vibe of a sci-fi than we get published today, because it does have, I don't know, it's just got this like level of feeling to it that I got when I was reading The Wheel of Time. But The Wheel of Time is different because it like you actually get tied to the characters and stuff. So it's in a league of its own. As I said at the beginning of this video, it definitely feels like something unto itself that's totally different, which might just be because I am not a super versed sci-fi reader yet. I only really started reading the sci-fi genre last year. So if I am totally wrong, please correct me down below. But also, these are just my opinions, so please be kind, because I know this fandom is very prolific and I could be offending a lot of people by saying I don't like Paul. So there is that. But yes, I ended up giving this 4 stars, as I said, and I am intrigued to see where this goes next. The next one I want to talk about is The Last Watch by J.S. Downes. Now, this is a more recent sci-fi, so Dune was published in like the 50s, I do believe. Let me just make sure I'm saying that right. This was published in 1965, so I was not quite right, but it is a classic and it has been around for a really long time. Last Watch, on the other hand, was, I believe, published in 2021. Yeah, copyright 2021. So this is quite new and quite fun. So this follows a cast of characters. We follow most clearly two different people. So we follow Adequin Rake, who is like the commander for a ship called the Argus. And the Argus is stationed at the edge of the universe, essentially. It is filled with people who are unwanted by society. They are the dregs, they are the criminals, they are the people who have done wrong. In such cases as we follow our second point of view, who is Cavalon Mercer, who is essentially an exiled prince. Prince in air quotes, because it's not really a prince-like being. He is the son of like the head honcho guy on one of the planets around. So it follows the two of them, and as they are living life on this ship, and Cav kind of, you know, integrates himself into the ship, and he's interesting because he has all this training and he's gone through university so long, and he's had all of this privileged upbringing. He quickly becomes like just an essential cog in the machine, but he's also a rebellious kid. I say kid very hesitantly because he's older than me. So he's like a rebellious kid, and he doesn't want to follow the status quo. When they are sitting in the Argus at the edge of the divide, they realize that something isn't quite right with the divide. And the divide is like the edge of the universe vibe. Like that's what they call the divide. It's the edge of the universe. And the captain, I keep calling her the captain. I don't know if she's actually the captain, but we're just gonna call her the captain, Quinn. She talks to one of her like people, and the guy's like, so we've been having these like time warp issues. So there's really interesting things with time here where they'll like see doppelgangers and doubles of themselves, which is like from 20 minutes in the future kind of a thing. And like they're called time skips. Really cool aspect of this. And she's just like, why is this happening? This shouldn't be happening unless we are drifting. And he goes, we aren't drifting. And he's doing all these different calculations and everything. And he eventually finds out that the divide is coming closer to them. And that's what's causing this issue. And they're like, oh, damn. The edge of the universe is like collapsing in on itself. It's coming in. So that essentially makes these people who are at the edge of this universe the last people that society needs or wants. They are tasked with saving the universe because they are the only ones there, and they are the only ones who know and who recognize this in time to stop it. I loved this book so much. It quickly became one of my favorite sci-fi books. I gave this 4.5 stars, and I have the sequel to it on my shelves somewhere. Right here, The Exiled Fleet, which I will be reading very, 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 very soon because I love this so much. I found diving into this was just so easy to lose myself in. I instantly just fell in love with the relationships between the characters in this. It had that, you know, team of misfits vibe that I love. I love this trope. The last team that the world wants is what the world actually needs, you know, to survive, to save the universe. It was just very, very, very good. And the world building was so cool with the little time skips. I loved it. And the writing was just beautiful. And in contrast to Dune, which had me feeling so detached from the characters and like I was just witnessing the story like a movie, this one, I was living it with the characters. I was into it. I was invested, and I was just like emotionally tied to these people. I love Cav and Quinn's relationship with each other. Like, it's totally platonic. It starts as like, okay, Quinn is higher up than Cav, but Cav does not really recognize authority in the same way. And at one point they kind of like, they go through a lot of stuff, just the two of them, that kind of puts them on a level playing field. And they just have such mutual respect for each other. I love it, and I'm very excited to see where this team goes from the events in this book. That is all I'm going to cover on this, because any further and I'm going to start going into true spoilers. So I try to keep these reviews as spoiler-free as possible, but I just get so into it that I love these books. All right, so that was my dual book review for Dune by Frank Herbert and The Last Watch by J.S. Dowse. These are both wonderful sci-fi books, totally different aspects in both of them. So I would say that's Dune. If you want a sci-fi that has that classic feel, that's just a little different and has a little bit more of a fantasy feel than anything else, go for Dune. If you want something that is world-ending, space operatic, but still like links you to the human aspects and the characters of the story, because we only really focus on the two characters and then like whoever revolves around them, go for The Last Watch. If I had to pick between these two, I would pick The Last Watch every day of the week. It is just that good. Anyways, my friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Let me know down below what books you want to see reviewed from me, and I will try to get to them. But other than that, have a lovely week. I will catch you in another video very, very, very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.